Hey kids, Mr. Fly here, hope you're well, and welcome to my latest bike review. This is a review that I've been really looking forward to doing, because this bike is what was badged as the GS Destroyer. Well, Triumph never actually said that, of course, but this bike, which is the new Tiger 1200, and this guy is the Rally Pro, is a bike that Triumph very much have taken aim at the big GS on. So in this video, I'm going to be very much looking at this bike with a view of how it compares to the GS. Okay, so here she is then, the mighty Triumph Tiger 1200, in this case in the Rally Pro, guys. Check this thing out. It is a handsome looking bike, I have to say. I have to leave it up to you to decide whether you think it's better looking than the GS or not. I think both are good looking, actually. I love what they've done with the front light on here. This particular one obviously is in black. It also comes in a very fetching green colour, which is my favourite, but it doesn't look too bad in the black. Now, Triumph say that when this came out, or they said that it has class-leading capability in handling, world-conquering comfort and unbeatable T-plane triple character. Well, I intend to find that out on this review, and what I'm going to do in this review is something slightly different to what I normally do, whereas I normally talk about bikes generically. In this review, I'm definitely going to be comparing this against the GS, because I'm the sort of person this bike is aimed at, and I'm currently a GS owner. But in terms of how the thing looks, there's the triple engine, nice finish on it, typical Triumph build quality on here, really nice fit and finish. The exhaust is quite neat on here, quite narrow, I think probably done like that so you can get plenty of room in the panniers. As you can see, it's got a double-sided swing arm, but this one has a shaft drive, which is a big plus for many people. There we can see the reservoir for the suspension. And yeah, nice looking machine. It's got spotlights on there as standard, and yeah, I think they've done a good job on the styling overall. So okay, without further ado, let's ride it and see how she goes. Alrighty, so welcome back aboard. All very well what she looks like, but what does she ride like? Well, when you jump on these things, they feel instantly familiar. The riding position does feel very GS-like, it has to be said, and that is not a bad thing. That is a good thing. Nice wide handlebars, great view forward. Legs are a little bit of an acute angle maybe, but maybe slightly more than the GS, but not much in it. But yeah, very, very comfortable place to be, as you would expect. Seat on it is a little bit harder than I'm used to on the GS, but again, it's not uncomfortable. I'm, you know, splitting hairs here. Right, where's this fella going? Thank you. Or lady even. So yeah, comfort wise, it's all there as you'd expect. Is it better than the GS? Is it more comfortable? No, it's about the same, I'd say. In terms of its handling and its feel, well, Triumph have done wonders with this. I was very sceptical when they said that this was going to be so much better than the outgoing Tiger 1200, which on paper was a great bike, but in practice was a very lardy machine and felt very, very heavy and cumbersome. This doesn't feel like that at all. Been very surprised how light and flickable this feels. Again, this Rally Pro version with its extended suspension travel is a little bit wallowy, I guess. I would prefer the GT version, the road focus, because this one does have a lot of fork dive. When I brake here, look, can you see that fork dive? It's just, look at that. I'll mention that a few times on this review. Something I don't like, and on the GS something you definitely don't get, because you've got the telelever front end on that, of course. How does this thing go? Well, it absolutely flies when you want it to. Oh, I'm having to hold on, I have to say, and that is a fast motorcycle. It feels a lot quicker than the GS. It's up there with Multistrada V4. So if speed is your thing, then yeah, look no further, this is the bike for you. With regards to the cockpit, what you're looking at, it's all very nice in here, I have to say. It's quite familiar if you've ridden other Triumphs. The screen, the TFT is quite big on this, but I have seen this design of TFT on other Triumphs. I think most recently on the Speed Triple they've got this similar sort of layout. Nice and clear, I do like it, and the way that it goes to the side when you start to select options is quite good. So for example, if I hit the mode button, there we go, it goes off to the side and you can change riding modes and so on. The bike is absolutely laden with electronics, as you would expect. Those aren't particularly important to me, I have to say, so I'm not going to go on about those. Go and watch somebody else's review if you want to learn all about the electronics on here. Take it as read. There's got all the electronics you could possibly need, and many more besides. I'm more interested in the characteristics of the bike. How does it feel to ride? Does it put a smile on my face? How does it compare to the GS in that respect? Or handling wise, it handles just as well, I'd say. Around these sort of sweeping twisties of my back roads, a little clean, there's a little bit of rain about, it feels really, really nice. Again, I think I prefer the GT just for a little bit less suspension travel, but if you are somebody that wants to do a bit off-roading or green laning, then this is the bike to have. Although I have to say, I'm 5'8" with a 32-inch leg. That's not the inseam, that is just the leg I have in trousers, however that works out. So medium-sized fella, I'm absolutely on my tippy toe on this. Although I'm perfectly confident on the road on this, I think off-road I wouldn't be confident. And this is with the lowest possible seat. So let's just quickly touch on the specs then on the bike. Okay, let's talk spec then, and specifically have a look how she compares to the BMW R1250GS. The engine on here, all new 1160cc inline triple with that T-plane firing order. Personally, I prefer a smooth triple, but this is supposedly adds character to the bike and makes it better for off-road riding. It's absolutely fine, but for me, if I had the choice, I'd rather just kept it as a smooth triple. Power-wise, this engine puts out 148 brake horsepower, so it's up on the GS1250, which is 136 brake horsepower, and torque-wise, the Triumph puts out 130 newton meters, whereas the GS is 143, so the GS is slightly up on torque. Braking on the Tiger, taken care of by these Brembo stylemas on 320mm discs on the front, whereas the GS, I think, currently has BMW branded brakes, and they're on 305mm brakes, so technically at least, these are better brakes than on the GS. Suspension wise, the Triumph has semi-active shower forks, as you can see here, and at the top you can see where the cables come out, and personally I think they look a bit cheap where the cables come out. On the rear we can see the suspension around here as well. It's got that big reservoir there, and there's the shock there, and again it's the semi-active stuff. I think that's an option on the GS, so as standard the Triumph wins on that one. Something very important to me is seat height, and the minimum on the Rally Pro that I've got here is 875mm, so it's a very tall bike. The GSTE is 850mm, but you can get a lowered option for that, starting at 800mm. So as far as options for short people are concerned, and I class myself as one of those, then the GS wins. The weight of the Tiger, cunningly with 90% fuel, is 249 kilograms. The GS fully fueled is 249 kilograms, so it's a dead heat there. But of course, if you fill this up to the brim, then this is slightly heavier. They both have the same fuel tank capacity. This one and the GS1250 TE, both 20 litres. I suppose we have to talk electronics, don't we? They don't really matter too much to me, but both bikes, this, the Tiger 1200 and the GS, are laden with electronics. Loads of stuff on these bikes these days, of course. I'm not going to go through those. Check out somebody else's review if you want to find out all about the electronics. I'm more interested in how the bike feels and rides. And what about the all-important pricing? Well, this Tiger 1200 Rally Pro starts at 17,700 according to the website. The Explorer with a bigger fuel tank is 19,100, and if you just look at the figures on the websites, that makes it slightly more expensive than the GS. So welcome back aboard. You find me behind a white van. It wouldn't be one of my reviews without a white van, would it? Luckily only a small one, so not blocking my view too much. And again, this tall seat height on here is great for letting me see over vehicles. I mean, I know this road like the back of my hand, but great view from here, commanding view. It's like the Range Rover of the bike world. If you are a Tiger 1200 owner of before, on the previous bike, don't think of this as an update on that bike. It is completely different in every way, and it's completely different in a good way in every way. I can't believe how much more agile this feels. One thing I do like is this screen adjustment, very simple, look, all the way down, and then I get a bit of air in my face, all the way up, and actually the air isn't in my face. In fact, it goes sort of above my head, so the wind protection on it is pretty good. Just going to try those brakes out on here. Amazing stoppers on here, the stylemas, which arguably technically are better than the Beamer. So the front, yeah, they're amazing, but you do get that fork dive I talked about. Let's just try the rear. Yeah, the rears aren't bad either. And that front actually isn't grabby, it's quite nice and progressive, so they are nice, these brakes, there's no doubt about that. The engine sound is a little bit disappointing. It's got the triple in here, of course, and Triumph know how to make a triple engine. I really feared that by making it that T-plane crank version, they would have taken some of the joy out of the triple, but actually, it's alright. There are some vibes, but nothing intrusive. It sounds alright too. It's not particularly loud, the engine. It's not obnoxious. If you want a bit more volume, you might want an aftermarket pipe, but I think as these bikes are largely, I suggest, going to be used as tourers, then I think the exhaust note is just about right. Mirrors on here seem fine to me. Typical Triumph mirrors. The one on the right I can see loads out of. There's no vibrations that I can see in it. The one on the left I can't comment on because I've got my camera on it. I'm taking a risk there. I've lost cameras before doing that, so we'll see how that goes. And look how that is shaking around. If it gets any usable picture, I'll be amazed. And if it does, well, that just shows how good GoPros are. Quick shifter on here is lovely. Yeah, for exploring the back roads, an absolute cracker. So cards on the table, I am a GS fanboy. If you haven't seen my channel before, I am a GS rider. I've owned a R1250GS for ages. I've got a 2013. And I'm sort of in the market for a new adventure bike. And at the moment, it's between a new GS, look out quick, the Ducati Multistrada V4S, and now this bike. And these are amazing times if you're in the adventure bike market, because it's very difficult to choose. All these bikes are absolutely cracking. Nothing wrong with the agility of this, that's for sure. Now, as a self-declared fanboy, I thought I was going to jump on this and think, now, you know what, it's top heavy and it's vibey and I don't like the engine and the GS is just better in every way, but it's not that clear cut. Oh no. Even for a self-professed fanboy of the GS, this bike is right up there with it. It's very marginal now. So one of the criticisms I have heard about this bike is that at cruise speed on motorways, there are some vibrations on the bike. Well, here I am. I thought I would purposely come out on the motorway and just check that. Here I am, I'm doing typical motorway cruise speeds. I'm on the M40, I'm doing 74 indicated, so probably about 70 miles an hour in reality. 4,500 RPM. I can't find any, there's no intrusive vibes here. Yes, you can feel you're on a motorcycle. There's a little bit of vibration perhaps through the pegs and through the seat, but it's nothing that's going to get on your nerves. I thought that with the T-plane crank they might have ruined the engine, because I love a triple me and I love the smoothness of them. But actually this is absolutely fine. You do long stretches and I do not think the vibrations, which are there, but I don't think they would be annoying vibrations. They just let you know you're on a motorcycle. The other good thing about cruising on a motorway is it's got cruise control over here and the controls are on the left hand side, which I like. It means, you know, some bikes they put them on the right, which is when that's your throttle hand. It just doesn't make any sense, does it? Not radar cruise control on here, of course, but that doesn't particularly matter to me. I do find cruise control handy when I'm going on tour, particularly if you're on long motorway stretches, or indeed if you're in roadworks or whatever. So it's a handy addition to the big Tiger to have that. In terms of wind protection, this adjustment is brilliant on here, dead easy to use. With it in its uppermost position, I'm 5'8", so I'm a medium-sized fellow. All this is calm here, completely calm. In fact, it's calm over my head as well. A little bit of wind blast on my shoulders, on the very extremities, but not much. I'm well protected. For a screen that looks so small, it's doing a good job of wind protection. Shove it in the down position, yeah, sure, I've got a bit more on my face, but it's clean air, it's not turbulent. Closer. No problem at all. If anything, I'd say in my experience that's better than the GS in terms of wind protection. A lot of these bikes are going to be used for touring purposes. Yeah, you can knock off motorway miles on here. Great comfort with the plong, loads of power, no problems with those vibes, there really isn't. And good wind protection as well, particularly with it in its uppermost position. Only issue with that adjuster I can see is you might want to get fitted a dedicated sat-nav, you know, like a standalone device, and that little bit there is the bit where it would obviously go, and of course you wouldn't then adjust the screen. So if you can do that, you'd have to put a sat-nav on the handlebars. No big deal, just something to bear in mind. I have tried pairing my phone with this bike so that I can try out the sat-nav and all the connectivity issues, and I have to say I've failed miserably. The Triumph app looks quite easy to use, but I tried it 5 times now to sync up with my phone. I just cannot pair the Bluetooth with my iPhone. I get this pairing fail message. I don't know why that is, but I can't bring you any sort of review of what the built-in, what's this fella doing, what the built-in connectivity is like. I would way prefer a dedicated sat-nav built into the bike that doesn't depend on your phone. That's a black mark as far as I'm concerned. The BMW GS has that dedicated sat-nav you can get as an extra. I'd definitely go for that, or buy an additional sat-nav, a TomTom or something for this bike. Yeah, not a fan of the connectivity on the Triumphs, or indeed on any other bikes that do the whole connectivity thing, to be honest. Not for me. Oh, come on then, let's take the bike into the station and do one of my lugging about tests. Let's see how easy this thing is to get up off the stand, move around, see what the turning circle is like. Stick her into a normal parking space. This one will do. Let's see what she's like to lug about. So let's the hill holder assist has come on, look, as denoted by the H on there, another little feature on here. Works quite nice, and it's not very hard to defeat, whereas on the GS you have to give it quite a lot of revs to overcome the hill hold, so I like that on here. Anyway, what we don't really want is the hill hold on, because I want to move the bike. Okay, so there she is, and of course got this big grab rail bit at the back, so easy to get hold of. The stand on here quite big, doesn't lean over that far though. What's she like to get up off the stand? Not an awful lot of heft required, I have to say. So much easier than the old Tiger. Very similar to the GS actually in terms of heft. Turning circle though, I can already tell, not as good as the GS. This is quite a wide turning circle in comparison. Round we come. That's full lock. There we go. So pleasantly surprised that it doesn't feel heavy at all. But in terms of turning circle, it's not terrible, but it's not as good as the GS. The GS would have done that tighter, if that's important to you, something to bear in mind. But actually, in terms of living with it, lifting it off the stand, getting it in and out of the garage, that sort of thing, this thing actually is a piece of cake. How about riding the Tiger around town? Well, of course, it's not necessarily designed as a commuter bike, I get that. But if you're only going to have one bike from time to time, you're going to want to have to ride it around town. So let's see how the big Tiger does. One thing I would say about this particular variant, the XC, the tall off-road focus one, is when you're riding around town, that is actually an advantage because it gives you a great view over traffic. Okay, this is a sort of a quiet lunchtime in a market town in the UK. It's not like riding in the middle of London at rush hour. But even here in High Wycombe, being high up means you can plan your route around traffic, which is nice. This bike feels so much more agile than its predecessor. The old 1200 was such a lardy bike, as I've said before. This one has lost all the lard. It really feels no heavier than the 800 when you're riding it. Triumph have pulled a bit of a master stroke there. Just nipped by this vehicle. Now, dare I filter? Probably not actually, because I do feel a bit ponderous on this. The bike really is a little bit tall for me. I'm only on tippy toes, so I don't want to start filtering as I'm not used to the bike. But if I owned the bike and had been riding it for weeks, I would have done that. In terms of slow speed control though, look, I'm in first at the moment. We're up to second. The fueling on this absolutely beautiful. These days manufacturers are strangled by Euro regulations, and how Triumph have managed to do this, I don't know. In fact, look, I can go up to fourth in the third, 30 miles an hour in fourth. The bike is not complaining at all. It was really rather smooth. You know, they've done wonders with this big triple. Very nice. When you brake though, look at this dive. That I don't like. That's one of the things that I love about the GS, is the fact you've got that funny front end on it. The telelever front end, it gets rid of all that brake dive. Some people don't like it because they say that it removes feel from the front end of the bike, but personally I don't find that. I rather have the lack of brake dive. This one certainly dives. Not helped of course because it's got that long travel suspension on this more off-road focus version. Where's he going? Get round here quick. But yeah, for such a big bike and on paper heavy, Really does feel quite agile, and in town, no issues whatsoever. I do love the grunt on this bike. It's got oodles of power. It definitely scores over my old GS on that front. Everywhere you are on it, wherever you wind the throttle on, it absolutely flies. Even though the headline numbers of horsepower on this aren't huge, they are bigger than the GS, but it just feels quick. I like the way they've done the mapping on this. It's just the power is where you need it. You don't have to wind it up to ridiculous RPMs. But when you need a bit of shove, there's loads of shove there. Yeah, that brake dive is quite pronounced there, just as I was coming up to the roundabout there. That would get on my nerves. Oh, a bit of a whiff in the air. That Volkswagen Golf ahead that seems to be driving a little erratically. I can smell a bit of cannabis wafting out of it. Getting that so much more these days. I don't know if you've noticed it too, but when you're on a bike, of course, you can smell everything around you, can't you? And these days I'm getting, hello sir, more and more occasions where I can smell people smoking pot while they're driving. It is not a good thing. Do not do it, kids. Let's go down here and get out of the way. Oh, bit of white van fun. Just down this slightly darker road. It's great to see, look, that the switchgear on here is fully lit. It's got this sort of reddish glow about it. At last, Triumph for doing that now. Not all manufacturers do, but on a bike of this sort of cost and spec, you'd expect to see that. So that's a nice touch from Triumph. I like that. Not that the switchgear is particularly complicated on this actually. For a bike that's got so many features and functions, the switchgear is quite straightforward. What I don't like about it is the fact that it's got this little joystick that Triumph do use on lots of their bikes. On some of their bikes they have 4 buttons directional. I actually prefer that. But again, while we're doing the comparison directly with the GS, I very much prefer the way that the GS does it with the whiz wheel. That's just so intuitive to use and so much better than this joystick that I find a bit fiddly. Gearbox, so much better than the GS. Quick shifter on here works lovely. Although over the years they have improved the gearbox and the quick shifter on the GS, and it's not bad now. This one is excellent, and certainly compared to my old GS, this is way better. Liking the gearbox on here. So you don't have to use the clutch very often because of the up and down quick shifter. When you do use it, the clutch is nice and light as well. An opportunity to nip forward in the queue a bit. I can't get over how light this bike feels compared to the old one. I'll tell you what, for A-road blatting, this thing is an absolute beast. Lovely on these big sweepy corners. It's amazing, you'd think the suspension would throw it all off being so long travel and obviously tuned, for want of a better word, for off-road. Actually it handles really lovely. So many good choices for adventure bikes these days. What with this and the new Multistrada and the new GS coming out, these are the 3 to choose from. This is definitely one of those bikes that if you could only have one bike and you want to do everything, then this is brilliant. You can have great fun touring on this. It's super comfortable. It's great fun in the twisters too. So there's that fork dive again that I just don't like. Whoa. It's just starting to get a little bit damp under tyre. You can see a little bit of rain, bit of drizzle forming on here. It's not exactly raining and wet, but I just wonder what the tyres are on here. So just jumping off, I can see this one's fitted with what are they, Metzler Karoo street tyres. They've got a sort of a bit of an off-roady look, but of course, well, there's a clue in the title, isn't there? Street. So they're mostly street focused, and they seem absolutely fine. I've had no problems at all with them while I've been riding over the last couple of days, and yeah, whilst I couldn't really claim this is wet, they're pretty, well, okay, it does look wet, look. They're confidence inspiring enough. They seem fine. Not been off-road with it yet though. I think they'll be alright for some light green lanes though, but it's a little bit tall for me, so I think I'll give that a miss on this test. Speed bump, let's try standing up. Absolutely fine. I have to say, beautiful stood up on here. The balance is lovely. My feet are just where you'd want them. My knees just rested into the fuel tank. Yeah, it feels really balanced stood up. Like it. So if you are an off-road fiend, or you want to do the old green lane, whatever, standing up on here, really, really comfy. It's really nice and balanced. Nice one drop. Yeah, in fact, I'd say better than the GS in that respect. The GS ain't bad at standing up, but this just feels even more natural and balanced. Yeah! Yeah, don't think this is a boring adventure bike by any means. The thing absolutely flies when you want it to. Stay there, thank you. And coming into a 50, so that's the end of the fun. Okay, so having ridden this bike for the last couple of days and really trying to get my head around what the bike's about and whether I would like this over a newer GS, what are the kind of standout pros and cons of this bike? Well, there are a few things that I've made a note of here that I thought I'd mention. First off, the pros. The bike definitely feels much, much lighter than I anticipated. It's easy to live with. It no longer feels doggedly top heavy. It is a little bit more top heavy than the GS because of course that holds its weight nice and low down because of the boxer engine, but this isn't so top heavy it becomes a problem. So it's nice and light in that respect. It goes really well. This is a fast bike. It feels much quicker than the GS, no doubt about that. And the other thing I put here as a pro is it's as comfy as a GS. Couple of cons that I've noted here, things that would get on my nerves if I owned a Tiger. That fork dive, it might be a small point and it may not be important to you, but whenever you brake on this, that front end bows down like a nodding dog. That would get on my nerves. Connectivity for the phone and sat-nav, very annoying. I've never managed to get that to work reliably on any motorcycle yet. I don't think it's just a Triumph thing, but the BMW with its separate sat-nav is definitely a winner for me. Of course, you could always buy a separate TomTom or something for this, so you can get around that. The switch gear on this as well, not as good as the GS.
I know exactly what TMF is saying in his review. Yeah, it's a good bike, but it's not a GS beater. What do you think, Mavis?
He needs to get a grip.
Yeah, he needs to get a grip. Get a grip, Andrew.
And neither is the TFT. The TFT on the GS is definitely the class leader. It's easy to use. It makes sense to use. This one, it's a bit difficult to work out how the heck the thing works, and you've got that fiddly joystick as well. And then last but not least on here for the cons, this particular bike is just a little bit too high for me. At 5'8" with a 32-inch leg, I'm on my tiptoes. I'm fine on the road, but as soon as I get off on a little bit of a dirt track like this, just turning it around here is a little bit of a tricky moment. So yeah, for me, I wouldn't go for the Rally Pro. I'd go for the more road-focused version, the GT. So to answer that all-important question then that I posed at the start of the video, would I buy one of these instead of a GS if I was in the market for a new adventure bike, which I probably am sort of in the market for one? Well, I have to say it's very, very close now, very close indeed, much closer than I thought, but putting my money where my mouth is, I think I'll probably still go for the GS. There are too many little things about this that would be a bit of a niggle that you don't get with the GS. But that said, if you're a Triumph fanboy and you're a bit taller than me maybe, perhaps this is the bike for you. I am clutching at straws when I come to the difference. This is now very, very close indeed to the GS. It is not the GS Destroyer that Triumph would have had you believe, but it's certainly up there with it. It's a lovely, lovely bike to ride. If you prefer the styling and you prefer the general bike, it might be one for you. So all I can say is this is just my opinion. I'm no expert. Go and ride one yourself, see what you think for yourself. But for me, I'm going to stick with the GS. Although, of course, there is a new GS coming out, rumoured to be, at the end of the year. So I'll be waiting around to see what that one's like before I make any rash decisions. All right, so there we go. That's the Triumph Tiger 1200. Beautiful bike, very, very close to the GS now. Not quite there, but not far off. Hope you enjoyed the video and look forward to speaking to you again soon. Until then, this has been the Mr. Flyer. Cheerio. All right, so here she is then, the mighty Triumph Tiger 1200, this time in the... Oh, no, it's again. All right, let's talk spec then and see how she compares to the BMW GS R12...